What up, TTS family? It's your boy Ken coming at you with another video. Today I have
Sean
here to assist me. We're going to be going over aftermarket parts. One of the most common questions we get from walk-in customers or customers who are shopping through Hot Glocks, right, is why would I do aftermarket parts? What are the purpose? Some of those purposes are going to be for look. So, most people take a look at this and go, oh, that's just a fancy Glock. Well, it is, but it also has purpose. So instead of having the standard Glock feel, right, which if you get sweaty hands or, in case of emergency, you actually have to draw, you can slip. Or this one, we actually did a really deep, very abrasive engraving. So that's going to help with sweaty hands, or if you're in an emergency and you're pulling, you're going to maintain that grip, especially if you're having to shoot multiple rounds in rapid succession.
Big thing is too is a lot of times people come up to us and say, hey, I want a gun that runs like this, but yet you sold me a standard Glock and it just doesn't run like I feel like it should. Well, I get that, but so you're going to have your mil spec, which is going to be your basics of stuff, and then you're going to have what your upgraded parts or your aftermarket parts. That's where you're going to start to find what you're looking for inside a gun, is changing out all your parts separately, kind of feeling which one's smoother for you, which one feels more comfortable for you. So, I mean, yes, there is a look to it that you're going to notice, but at the same time, it is all for functionality purposes. Now, of course, the gold barrel in there, not necessarily for functionality purposes. For that is a look, but, nowadays a lot of people do like the gold, so it sells.
Yeah, and with this particular barrel, right, clear, it's actually ported. So you have a ported barrel and you have a ported slide, right? What that enables you is, instead of getting a threaded barrel to put on here and then adding a compensator, you can maintain the size of your firearm but still get the effects of a compensator, right? So now all your gas is going to escape from the port. Now each slide, each manufacturer, they'll do stuff different. For this one specifically by Zafiri, they actually move the port in front of your front sight. That way, as you're shooting, you don't get all the gas coming up in front of your view, right? So you'll still be able to maintain sight picture, right? And you just have all that gas in front instead of it coming in front of.
And that kind of leads us into the whole idea of ported slides and ported barrels and everything like that. So for example, again, this is a comp version. This is a ported barrel. So the main difference that you're going to notice between the two is, yes, they both do help reduce like your kick and everything like that, but basically if you're trying to reduce your recoil to your gun the most, I'm going to recommend that compensation at the front. Now don't get me wrong, the ported is really nice, but like he was saying, it's up. With this, we have it up past the front sight post, so that now you're not getting all that debris that's going to fly all over the place, compared to the ported version. You're going to have all this gas that's coming up a lot closer and a lot closer to your face, basically. In my opinion, I'm going to have to go with the compensated version over the ported.
Now you can do the ported comp, such as this one, or you could put a threaded barrel on there, like so, and then you have your compensator on the front end. Now that's going to stick out. So obviously, if you have a holster that fits this perfectly, once you put a threaded barrel on there, then an external compensator break or anything like that, it may no longer fit your holster. You'll have to change that up.
Another thing too is something that I've noticed over the years of just kind of shooting compensated pistols that have your threaded barrel on it, is that to be able to keep that thing on there, you're either going to have to have a pin in there somewhere, or you're going to have to put like your Loctite on there or something else like that. And even then, over time as you shoot, you're going to see it start to loosen, and maybe your compensator will start to, spin off of there. Compared to this built-in compensator in here, now I don't have to worry about that coming apart or falling apart on me. I know it's going to stay together at all points, and I know it's going to be strong and be able to handle what I need it to. So another version, I rather go with a barrel that's already comped. So my opinion, at least.
Yeah, which he brings up a good thing. Different companies, when they make their compensator, their muzzle brakes, a lot of them will use a different retention style. Some, they'll just have a locking screw, which that screw can come out as you're shooting, even if you Loctite it. Others, such as the Springfield, right? They have one that on the threads, there's actually a groove. So when you spin their compensator on, it's got spring tension and it locks into that groove, so it can't come undone. Tomato, do your research, figure out
it's
what
going to come down to
what's
exactly what works best for you, what's comfortable for you. Just to kind of hit back on what we were just talking about with the ported slides and the ported barrels. So this right here that I'm holding is being that ported slide, ported barrel. What Ken's holding is being that compensated version. Now, so again, you can see these ports lining up behind your front sight post, or where that front sight post would be. Again, now you're going to have a ton more gases popping up and everything like that, and it's just going to be either getting in your face, it's going to get all over your front sight post, and it's going to make your gun dirty in general. You're definitely going to have to do a way more in-depth clean. So again, again, my personal opinion, I'm taking that compensated version every day over the ported version.
Yeah. Now, it's going to come down to you and how your gun looks. Some people, they just want their gun to look cool. That's perfectly fine. I'm all for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your firearm is a piece of you, and what do we have? The Second Amendment and the First. Make it the way you want. Another thing you can get into is aftermarket triggers, such as this is Apex. Apex makes a really nice aftermarket trigger. This is a flat one. Why would you do that? Well, the simple thing is one, looks, but two, performance. So flat triggers, you tend to be more accurate. Now, if your firearm is for defensive reasons, I personally would want a more accurate firearm. This one right here looks like a regular Glock 43X, but we actually have the tactical store trigger, right? Our own trigger that we have in here. And what it is it's actually adjustable for your over travel. So instead of you pulling the trigger and it going all the way back, you can get it to stop right there. So when you do your reset, you just barely let up, which is great for follow-up shots. Some of the other things you can get into, right? So like on your Glock here, you got a plastic trigger, you got a plastic mag release. On here for your takedowns, sometimes they're metal, sometimes they're plastic, but they're really short, really hard to get to. So you can get things kind of like this cross armory, right? It's got multiple pieces in there. You get a metal magazine catch. Everyone will have their own opinion on that, but do what you think's best for you, what feels right. Sometimes you can get extended ones. So if you feel like this is too shallow, I don't know if you can see on there, but it's pretty flat, right? So if you feel like in your hand that's a little hard to do, you can always get an extended one that sticks out. It makes it much easier to do your mag release. As well as for your takedown, you can get, like this one is extended, so it's going to stick out more. So it's going to be a lot easier to get a hold of and to manipulate. So your aftermarket parts aren't just for style. It's great that that's there, but there's a lot of performance behind it.
And so kind of going back to the whole trigger pull and everything like that, and our custom triggers that we have here in the 43X right here. So what he was saying, going back to, being able to have it break a little quicker, you don't have to worry about it going back as far. So everybody knows a Glock trigger sucks. Everybody knows that. A standard Glock trigger, anywhere between 5 to 8 pounds, the trigger pull, nasty, they're disgusting. Nobody likes them. Once you start to upgrade that, you're going to realize, oh my God, it's so much easier for me to pull this trigger, and I don't have to squeeze as hard. I don't have to worry about jerking my hand as hard. So that's one of the main reasons, is trying to get everything to be able to flow very, very smoothly. And the less tension I have to put on the trigger, the more accurate I'm going to be. And the quicker that I can pull that trigger again and have it as smooth as possible, the more accurate my follow-up shots are going to be. So I mean, even for myself, for my carry guns, I always try to change out the trigger first, because that's what I'm going to mainly feel a difference in throughout all my upgrades. I mean, I know both of us ourselves, we upgrade our triggers. So for example, he's got his flat face trigger and his M18 with that Wilson Combat lower. Very beautiful gun altogether. If you don't know, M18s by SIG are probably the most sought after.
They're very popular. They're great guns, especially since the Marine Corps took over the M18, the Army took over the M17. I have a adjustable flat trigger on mine with a spring kit. My trigger pull is usually 2.5 pounds. Some people are like, oh, that's too light. Hey, again, at the end of the day, it's your gun, it's what's best for you. I see over here, right, instead of changing out his frames, he did a grip thing where I changed out my frame to the Wilson Combat because it felt better and it was more ergonomic for me. As for him, why'd you go through with the tape on that?
So the reason I did the tape is because, it's easy to be able to take off. It's not going to mark up the gun in any kind of way that I really need, or honestly, I really don't care if it marks up my gun. It's a gun. It's meant to be used. It's meant to be hurt and destroyed. But for me, the reason I did the tape is because, honestly, with this, as I've noticed, the sweatier my hands get as I start to shoot after a long period of time, this tape, it's like a archery tape that you're going to see on bows and arrows and everything like that. The longer I start to use it and the more my hand starts to heat up, the stickier this gets. Once I'm done shooting it, I leave it for about an hour or so like that. I come back, it feels like a cloth. I really don't have to worry about it getting sticky or getting all over the gun. So that's kind of why I went with this. And again, just kind of hitting on my trigger. So this is a Glock performance trigger in here. So yes, it is still a Glock trigger. I don't really consider it an aftermarket trigger just because it is still a Glock trigger inside a Glock frame. But other than that, I mean, I have my threaded barrel right here, my suppressor height sights, my Hollison 507C. This gun is basically built for my comfortability, for my setup, for what I'm ready to use it for. I mean, very, very similar. You'll see many Glocks that are going to be styled a similar way, but that's how you know they work, and that's how you know they are going to perform very, very well. So just a little bit of my setup.
Yeah, and I will say, I'm not a big Glock fan, but they work, they're great, they're durable, and there's so many aftermarket parts for it. If you're just getting into firearms and you're like, hey, I don't just want a standard black gun, I want to make it my own, Glock is a great platform to start off on, followed by SIG. P365 to 320s, they've grown in such popularity that all these companies are starting to make aftermarket barrels, slides, the stronger recoil assembly. Some people are like, you know what, my gun's a little snappy, I want something to help reduce the amount of felt recoil. Well, just putting in a heavier recoil assembly will do that, right? Because instead of all that force slamming to the back, it's now moving just a tad bit slower, and it's slamming forward harder than your standard one. So instead of you having that big snap and coming down, it's going to be less, and it's going to want to come down that way. So there's just so many different things to look into and to get into. Again, I would recommend Glock. I'd also recommend SIG if you're just starting off. Everybody knows the AR platform, the assault weapon. There's so much you could do with it.
Armalite rifle.
Yeah.
Unless it's got 3 selectors.
Yeah, then those are the fun ones.
rifle.
Yeah, those are the fun ones.
But SIG, I highly recommend it. I highly recommend that you get out there, you start to shoot that gun more, you start to look at new parts that are going to help you with your tool. So, I mean, honestly, it's all about getting out there and getting accurate rounds down range and actually getting behind your firearm and pulling that trigger.
Exactly.
I can't say it enough. I get a bunch of people that come in here, and not only myself, but Ken as well, I'm sure he knows, a bunch of people come in here and go, well, I want to put this, and this, and that in it. Okay, that's fine. You can easily spend that extra $1,000 for all these extra parts. But you're going to get into it and you're going to be like, well, I don't really like this anymore. And you're going to try to come back to me and sell it back to me, and I don't want it.
Yeah. And one thing he said is if you don't know what parts you want to get, go to the range. Go to the range, put rounds down range. And if you're like, you know what, the gun itself feels fine. I don't have a problem with the way the grip feels, and I can easily ADS, and my natural sight alignment is great, but for some reason the trigger sucks. Well, you can look into doing aftermarket triggers. You can look into doing aftermarket strikers or anything that can lighten up, such as the springs, your trigger pull. Because something small,
there's so many different ways.
Huge difference.
So many different ways of being able to get that trigger lighter and just being able to get the functionality of the gun a lot smoother.
Yeah.
A lot of times too, you want a gun smoother, put rounds through it. It's got to be broken in. A lot of times people come in here, they'll buy a brand new gun from me, put 50 rounds through it, and say it's tight. Yeah, it's going to be tight. It's never been used. So obviously, the more that you use it, the more it's going to wear into itself, and the smoother it's going to be. But I mean, other than that, again, Glock and SIG are my top 2 brands that I would highly recommend because they have the most aftermarket parts out there. When it comes to the price points between the SIGs and the Glocks for their aftermarket stuff, they're roughly the same exact in price. Granted, depending on what you're looking at, you're probably going to be looking at $50 more or less. But
it's
again,
also brand specific.
Exactly.
The manufacturer of that part can make
you can pay for a Gucci shirt, or you can go to Walmart and you can go get a $20 shirt. They're both going to do the same thing, but I promise you, you're not going to be as pissed when you ruin that $20 shirt. So,
if you have any questions, please hit us up. We're at the Tactical Store here in Fort Pierce. If you're one of our Hot Glocks fans, you can always reach out to us through Hot Glocks. It's actually the same phone number that's on the Hot Glocks website, is also on our Tactical Store website.
As always, have a nice day.
Have a nice day.